It's Elaine Lindsay, grandmapreneur of True Social Media, who also happens to be the host of BBPTV show. It's lovely to be here this afternoon. I have an incredible guest, Ms. Fiona Birch. Hello, Fee.
Hi, how are you? Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I'm really excited because I got to hear Fiona speak back in 2017 at Social Media Camp in Victoria. And from the first time I heard her speak, I thought, oh, I really want to know more about this lady. And more to the point, I want her on the show because we all know my curiosity is way the hell up here. So with that said, I want to give you a little rundown. Fiona has a very interesting background and history and has a really cool job in the digital space. She's an insights-driven strategist who specializes in social media risk, which is something we don't often see, someone that's specific. More to the point, she deals with everything from gigantic corporations to athletes, which we'll definitely be talking more about. Fiona grew up in a small, I believe, coastal town in New Zealand and went to university in Australia. And then, hats off, you backpacked around the world in your 20s by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is phenomenal. I have a couple of other girlfriends who did the same thing. And now I'm kicking myself for not being quite that free. Now, that led to, and this is where we'll get into some really good questions, but that led to a number of years as an exercise physiologist. And there you dealt with, I guess, changing behaviors and looking at, the crux of a problem, I guess. And that's why you're very transparent and I find incredibly authentic.
Thank you.
What's really cool, she was the only female trainer in men's sports in Queensland.
Yeah.
Okay. And her office was in the locker room. Bet there's stories about that one too. From there, you go into medical writing, I guess, with pharmaceutical companies, and on to navigating the digital sphere and leveraging social media risk for athletes and brands. Now, you have been also a speaker since 1997. So I bet you have some phenomenal stories to tell us about that. But just to give you a sample of Fee, I want to read you. I got to find this. I found a quote from you.
Uh-oh.
No, good one. So if you're not building your online brand, the media and the trolls are. Yeah. I think that is such a perfect sort of rule to live by because it's so very true.
Absolutely. That's like the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Very good, very thorough. So I work with athletes now, but it hasn't always been the case. I still like to have sort of what I call the real world corporate clients here and there, and I do have one of those at the moment that takes up a considerable amount of time, which I love. And actually on Thursday I'll be going to the CCM World Invite, which is the largest hockey tournament in North America, to meet with and talk with prep school teams and state sort of teams and those kinds of anybody that's there, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you were just here a few months ago.
I was.
Do breakfast.
We did, actually. If you're ever in Ottawa and you need to be picked up from the airport, this lady will pick you up and take you to breakfast. I'll tell you that. That was a great trip.
I really, really like.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. And I was there for a preseason camp for an agent that I had met at the draft when I spoke to NHL and sort of USA hockey coaches there. So he's based in Ottawa, and he was having a preseason camp. Some of the guys were young. One of them had been drafted to the Leafs, and very excited to report that since that meeting and meeting Semi, who comes from Moscow, but actually moved to Canada when he was 13.
Oh, wow.
So he's known Canada, and he does, it is work for him. He plays for the Peterborough Petes. And anyone who follows hockey would know that he was signed to the Leafs. He played a few preseason games. So I've since seen him at a Leafs game. He wasn't playing, but we were all there. So he trained in from Peterborough to come to the game. So
Wow.
he's a great guy. So it's nice watching these guys, no matter where they are in their career, and it's also an interesting how we communicate with them, because with the players it's all DMs on Instagram. It's like if I send me a message, you can see the dots, like it comes right back at you. With the coaches it's all Twitter. So it just, it's about really understanding where they are and how they want to communicate. One thing I speak of is communication is received, not delivered. We often think, I'm going to put this out, we have to remember that in fact it's received, it's not delivered. So being adaptable to that
point.
So that's one of the things I've learned over the last few years.
And I think it's really important what you said there. It's so critical for you to go where your clients are, because in some instances it's definitely generational. Okay, you are definitely going to see generations. You have the Snapchat generation, you have Instagram, you have the old guard on Twitter that have always used Twitter, and there is a certain level that are LinkedIn and LinkedIn only. But it's really important for clients to realize that once you know your target market, then it is important that you be where they need you and not the other way around.
It is. And I spoke a lot the last few years, until probably the last two, that we were on our last year of Twitter. And I think Shafe, or I should say his full name, Mark Schaefer, he posted something the other day, and it was about how the revenue of Twitter has changed as they've adapted that platform. And it is shocking if you guys get to a grab of this thing. But it's interesting how, we're in the land of adaptation, and, it's goes beyond knowing the platform, the behaviors of people, understanding where they want to be. And so it's interesting times.
It is interesting. Kind of a wild ride too.
Yeah.
If you like change, which I know you do,
I do.
This absolutely speaks to, I think, just who you are and what you're all about. So for you, this has to be really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how I do love change. And you mentioned me traveling, and I'm a bit of a nomad, and in the way that in my life, not work so much, but like in my life, I always need to feel like I'm escaping to something. I'm not running from anything. I'm running to something. So I always need to feel like, what's the next thing? And I think that's where I get the energy to keep moving. And no matter how many times we fall flat on our face, we sort of get up, and it's because, and as entrepreneurs, it's just, we keep going, and it's because there's always something new out there. It's so exciting times for sure. So absolutely.
And you hit on something else there that's important. It's not about how many times you fall down, which in my case is good.
Yeah.
Falling down happens. It's about that getting back up again.
Yeah. I mean, I know when I started Private Online, it was because Laramie Tunsil had a huge fall from grace. He had a video come out during the 2016 NFL draft. Yeah. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that story, basically 2 years prior to his draft, he'd been at a party and was videoed. They were using a gas mask as a bong. And he very much knew that was on video. He obviously knew that it was out there, and I'm sure that was quite terrifying for him. Oh, yeah. But there was also some other stuff going on behind the scenes involving asking the coach for money because his mom couldn't pay the bill. And there's a whole bunch of political parts to that. But when I started Proathlete Online, it was because athletes were not getting the right advice. The advice that was given to athletes at that time because of that event was don't go to a party with a smartphone where there will be a smartphone.
Yeah.
It's 2016, so that means no parties. And the other thing was protect your password, because this video actually dropped into his account. Someone had the password for his account, but it wouldn't have mattered had his grandma started an account and used the correct hashtag or tagged somebody that would have made it go bigger, then it would have gone anyhow. So I was vehemently quite passionate about why is this information being given out there by these so-called experts in the field. And so that's where I started. But one thing I will say is, you start a business, you think that you're solving a problem and you think you have the solution, and you have to be very open to talking to people. I talked to people and traveled for 1.5 years before I officially launched. Because that business solution evolved because it's not about what I can do and what my talent is and what I can give a potential client. It's what they're willing to buy.
That's right. And,
they weren't willing to buy what I was selling, quite frankly. And I had to really understand and get, like, what are they currently doing? Like, why are they doing that? What is the culture that is entrenched in these organizations that is what they pass as acceptable advice? And it is because of there's certain boundaries in sport and the NCAA and, even the NHL and MLB has a whole other set of things. So it was really about going around. I mean, there are agents that I will not work with because they expect me to help their clients lie when they're in a bad situation. Yeah. And I just went, no, that's not what I will do. So I've turned down some pretty nice clients because I don't want to work with that agent. So finding agents where they are really interested in the short and long-term play for an athlete and what that will mean to them, not just digging them out of a hole and putting them in a bigger one, but actually getting them through. So, integrity is definitely important.
Absolutely. And that was the word I was going to use. I was going to say, don't you find that integrity, it doesn't matter, athlete, it doesn't matter who it is or what the situation. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Okay. There is not one of us that is blameless. I keep saying if we were all perfect, there'd only be 2 of us. We wouldn't needed to make any more. We're not perfect. And at every level, if people would just understand, you can acknowledge your mistake, ask for forgiveness, and hopefully not do it again.
I agree with that. And the other part to that is we've sort of gone to this place now where we're at apologist community, where we're in this apologist atmosphere of, well, I can just mess up. And then as long as I authentically say sorry and, bring on the drama, then we're good. And unfortunately, who you've built prior to that moment. And this is why, I was selling the risk. I was selling the I'll help you when you get into trouble. But here's the problem with that. Nothing you do after the fact is as good as what you could have done before. So I'm really not helping, actually. And the other thing, from a business point of view, from an entrepreneur point of view, it made me very not needed now. And in Canada, what I have learned, the difference between Canadian and US, people often say to me, why do you work 90% of the time in the US? And here's the answer: because in Canada, there's a business culture for many, not all, but if you don't solve the problem they have on their desk today, they don't need to call you back. They're very much a reactive and not a proactive. They don't really understand, for the most part, the long-term business build relationship. And you see this when we go to conferences, you see this over and over again, talking to clients, talking to other people, other entrepreneurs, other people in the digital space. So that's kind of one of the things. But then you also look at things like, if we look at the Logan Paul situation, he was the kid that was making 10 million a month on YouTube, and he went into the Japanese suicide garden.
Yeah.
And I do an exercise when I speak to athletes, and I'm like, under what context could that video he took, or parts of it, be released and it be okay? Because at the end of the day, it could have been used in a documentary by someone else. It could have been, it's not like we've never heard of this place before.
Nope.
It's not like it's never been on TV before, or on any sort of medium before.
Yeah.
And the problem was, he had built such a reputation as a jokester and that thing, that it was never going to play for him.
No, it was outside the realm of what was possible for his, yeah.
And his audience, it was like, now he could have gone in there and it been like, it could have been done. I think he could have done it. But the problem was, when he first apologized, it was not taken sincerely, because we've never seen real Logan.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've seen Logan, like Logan Paul, the Logan Paul. We've seen the Logan Paul show. We've never seen Logan. So we had no idea what he's like in a moment of, say, a family moment of all seriousness. We've never seen that, because he's only ever shown one dimension.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So one of the things that I do with athletes is, and with any clients, is try to show all the dimensions. You can keep some stuff that you don't want to share. You don't share everything.
Yeah.
Show all those parts of your personality.
I think that's an amazing point, because we are not one-dimensional. And, on the other side, I have different types of clients than you, and our main aim is not risk per se, but it's the same thing. I'm always telling the client that it's really imperative that people see you as a person. You have to have other parts. You can't just be the business, cartoon, the two-dimensional business, because none of us are. And that, in my answer to you earlier, saying, if people just apologize, there has to be that understanding of the sincerity and the contrition, because this, oh, I'm sorry, and then doing it again tomorrow, that's a whole different attitude. And I think people are savvy enough now, when you appear as a whole person, people are savvy enough to know when it's real. Yeah.
And we talked, earlier before the call about, the piece of the day is this ex-NFL guy who took a photo with his prom date. When you look at this image, what's interesting is that he's holding a handgun, and if his feeling, where he was coming from, where he was trying to have a bit of a funny, I guess, was, it's the old dad, and if the boy shows up, it's got to get past me and my shotgun. And when I heard about this image, I thought it was a rifle.
Yeah,
like a hunting rifle. That's kind of the when
the
you punch up your mind is like, here's the dad, he's sitting on the porch, he's got his rifle, and the boy comes up and he's like, oh, sir, can I take your daughter out? That is what he, but the fact that he's holding a handgun.
Yeah.
And and then in today's, we don't, obviously what's happened in the last week is horrible. It is just, it just befuddles me as to where he thought this was going to go. But, it's that misunderstanding of, it's my Twitter, I can put out what I want on my Twitter, this is what I think, versus what is the temperature in the room. It's like when you take out raw chicken and you put it out and you decide, like in the old days when we grew up, we would put our meat out on the porch, right, out on the balcony, the veranda, and we would defrost it outside, and we would have these actual things to stop the flies.
Yeah.
I don't remember getting that sick. I think it was okay. But it's kind of like, I say this to people, it's like, you've got to imagine you're putting raw food out. Does it need to be in the fridge in a special climate? does it need, if it goes out, how long is it going to be good for, and how long is it going to be, when is it going to go bad? And generally with content, it's going to go bad because you don't know. Let's say he posted that last night, which he did, and today there was a big shooting. So you don't know what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that you've got to understand the temperature, the climate, where the storms are coming, what you can't predict. You know, when people do live and they do the live of their TV movie that they're watching, I'm like, you don't know the script. You don't know what's coming.
No. And the thing is that so close to a sad event that just occurred.
Yeah.
There has to be some consideration now because it is so prevalent. And you know, I'm sure in the moment it seemed like a bit of a joke, and it would be funny to him. And you know, it's unfortunate that in this day and age we do have to take a beat before we do anything that could be considered controversial. You know, I come from the Murray Smith school of, would I want my grandmother to see it? Sadly, now I'm the grandmother. It's been a while. Would I want it on the front page of the New York Times? And would I want my clients and other business people to see it? If any of those criteria are not met, then err on the side of caution and just give it a hard pass.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that I work too is a lot of those athletes, young athletes, I work 14 to 18, and then I do prospects, which is the draft sort of kids, so the OHL draft, and then the NHL draft, and then also through to retirement of the pros. So many different stages in those careers. But one thing they're often told is just don't do anything dumb. They're like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And I think we need to provide them. One of the things that I learned from my last couple of years in this is we need to figure out, you know, how, because they're going to do it anyway. And let's give them the tool that actually will help them instead of like ruin them, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know I was a very rebellious teen. And
I cannot believe that.
Said, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. I would have made a beeline for each and everything you told me not to do. It's just who I am. And there's a lot of teens like that. It is harder in this day and age where everything you do is fodder for the media. So it makes it more difficult. But the fact is, young people are going to be young people. And you cannot stifle people to that extent and expect them to grow and learn. If we don't make mistakes, we can't possibly mature, become better adults who understand more.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I say to a lot of parents or coaches or the people, the agents is, you know, if we're only saying don't to athletes as an example, the only time they will learn anything is when it's actually probably too late. And most of the risk is offline behavior, not even online. It's not even what they're going to tweet or IG or Snap or whatever it is. It's got nothing to do with that. 90% of the time, it's what happens offline. It all ends up online. So them not having an account isn't really helping them because it's out there. They just don't have a chance to defend themselves or present themselves in a much more real, or I hate the word authentic, but that way. I just so misused. But the other part of it too is that if you teach them how to use these tools, first of all, they know how to use these tools. They don't know how to use these tools to build a resilient brand, which is a brand that will withstand an event, not prevent it, withstand it. So if you teach them, hey, how to build something and using the tools that they already know how to use their thumbs on, they will go, when they get that first little thing, they'll go, oh, wow, that was really great. That turned into this real conversation with a real person who's a sponsor or whatever it is. and then you have something to build with them on, and then you get them, like so much of what we do is I don't want to say babysitting, because these guys are smart, intelligent young men that I work with, but it is a case of, in the sense of listening to them and understanding why they don't want to. It's not even the agents that don't want to do this. It's actually the players don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And, they give me very valid reasons. They're like, it's just not me. I want to focus on the game. I don't want to do anything that's going to risk what my parents and myself have put everything on the line for. Some of these families have moved, or they've moved, like Simi has moved, and they just, and then the big one is, I don't want to make it about myself. They're just not that personality in all cases.
Yeah.
So those are 4 very, very valid reasons. And I do have to come up with the counters for that, and why this is actually why you should be doing it, and how to make it about, in their world, something they would want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is much better to be ahead of whatever's coming. And the fact is, it doesn't matter if you don't have accounts. Had a friend, not even a client, this is a few years back, his daughter was finished college, graduated with honors. I mean, she was fabulous. Unfortunately, had a few years with a rather forward crowd, we'll say, and there were a plethora of photos of her and another group of girls in various states of dishevel, let's say, and some of them were pretty atrocious. They weren't hers. They weren't even on her account. But when she got to have an account, she was tagged in a number of photos. She spent a year and a half looking for a job because this was an impediment to everywhere she went. And when you realize just how far-reaching that can be, that can be pretty devastating. This is not an athlete. This is not even a famous person. This is someone who was just, a bit thoughtless as a teenager, and picked the wrong friends. But it did cost her, and cost her dearly. Now, happy to say that was a long ago now, and she's almost 30, and things are great. But there were 2 years where things were very dire for her, and it led to serious issues for her.
I mean, for me, if someone came to me and said, "What would you do?" I would have. My counsel would be for her to actually come out in whatever medium at the time has the most reach, and to actually confront it.
Yeah.
And to actually be like, hey, you know how there's some of you that are watching this that are like, oh, glad there were no cameras around when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And then there's some of you that, were, made better choices maybe than I did, or those kinds of things. And, and here's where I am. I chose not to have any social media. Unbeknownst to me, I was already on social media. I didn't, I was naive in that. And now here I am. And it's actually really hard for me to find a job. I would actually go that far. I would say, I'm unable to do this. These are my skills. These are my things. This is what I'm passionate about. This is who I am. And I would have gone, and I would get as many people to share that. And, I think that we have seen this happen where people have actually then contacted that person and gone, here are 50 job offers. So there are ways, but it is a risk, and it is about being transparent. And many people are like, oh, I don't really want to make it a bigger deal than it already is. And sometimes that is right. Sometimes you don't want to make it a bigger deal than it already is.
Absolutely.
But it's not that I would say if everyone gets into that situation, they should come out with a video and confront it. It's really about looking at what is the real situation and weighing it up for that individual. So it's not a blanket answer, but my gut is that that'd be, but then I would say to this person, would you be comfortable with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in this particular case, a year and almost a year and a half had gone by before she was transparent with her parents and explained what the issue was. Because up until then, you know, I think she was just hoping that she'd get a job and they would never have to talk about this. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of us come from the school of, if we never mention it, maybe it'll just go away.
I
We
know.
don't do that anymore. And guess what? It never actually worked.
No, I mean, one thing that I say to clients, and I've worked with some reality TV clients, is like, before they go on the show, I'll say, okay, what do you want to share? What don't you want to share? And the biggest question, what's discoverable?
Yeah.
Because I can generally find most things on people in about 45 seconds. I can do some pretty good digging. So it is, you know, there's those things you want to, because those are three very different things. What do you want to put out there? What don't you want to put out there? And what's going to be out there anyway?
Oh, that's such a good.
Yeah.
Comment. What a wonderful benchmark for people in general in business. Yeah. I think that's something you should check, no matter who.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, and then the other thing that I get is or I see as I go through my Twitter feed, and you know, obviously I follow a bunch of people in sports and all sorts, but you know, what I see is the retweet world. You know, and I actually have a piece where I go, I haven't dropped this video yet, but it's like, it's basically saying it's Twitter, not retweeter.
Yeah.
It's Twitter. Tweet, don't retweet. I'm not saying, actually, that's not right. It's not don't retweet. Don't retweet without a comment.
Yes.
Put your context behind it, because here's the thing. The name of that Twitter account could change tomorrow anyway. It could mean something completely different. But it's like, you need to jump off the fence and say what side you're on, and put a stake in the ground. Or if you can't put a stake in the ground, if you can't put your own words behind it, then don't tweet it. Retweet it. So it is, I see this all the time. I see coaches telling the athletes, they tell me, oh, we let them retweet anything. Like, we just don't want them to put anything of their own out there. And I'm like, oh, no. Great. So now you've got the media, the trolls, and then somebody else developing their brand. Like, where are they? Like, there's no idea. And you have no idea where that Twitter account is going to go. So all of a sudden you're endorsing not just that tweet, but that whole idea of that person. Yeah. The other thing that I find increases people's risk that they don't realize is the use of hashtags. And I have seen, not a client, there is I'll just say a sports person that uses hashtag AR47. Now, most people would go, what's an AR47? Well, it's kind of like an AK-47, but it looks more like the gun. It looks more like the gun the guy has in that prom photo, actually.
Yeah, it does.
It's an automatic weapon, or semi-automatic, whatever. And he puts it in everything. So he'll have a photo with some kid at the rink. Okay, we know he's a hockey player. Yeah. But he'll put it in there. Now, here's the thing. He comes from another part of the world where, you know, this is kind of commonplace. Yeah. So, you know, it'd be like someone, you know, in a gun state being like, oh, well, this is what we do on the weekends. We go shoot tin cans. I don't know. Yeah. But what's interesting is he takes photos that have nothing to do with, they're not even they're of a kid. They're of him and a boy that's probably going, oh God, there's so-and-so. He's like my hero. It's for a photo. Yeah. And it's so interesting to me that there's never any backlash. There's never any backlash on this person's Twitter account, because mostly his followers are at home. Cool. Right. But they're understanding that culture. And so that's what, but the problem is he plays in the NHL. Oh, so he has to understand, like, this is actually the climate that we're in. That it might be okay wherever you come from, but it's kind of looked at kind of very seriously and differently here because we have the mass shootings of just general public. We have this, you know, street side, sort of terrorism that we've seen.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
often this came up recently with a client who was using these two hashtags over and over and over again on every single post that went out. And when the client came to us, we had a chat trying to figure out why are you doing this? And the answer came back, oh, well, I thought because it's about that. It's like, well, no. Like hashtags are meant to go with something that you want to go together. It's not because there's a tweet, there has to be two hashtags.
Right.
And quite often they weren't hashtags thought out. They were just assumed, and it can be very confusing for people. The other thing about hashtags, I don't know if you've run into this or not, but people really need to look at their handles and their hashtags and see what it actually spells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that a lot. What's interesting is so every year, like the 14s that I worked with last year, the 14s that I worked with this year, very different. And the younger guys and girls probably too, they actually don't use any hashtags on. They love Instagram, but they don't use any hashtags.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that they just have gone all anti-hashtag. And the other thing is, they'll say to me, like, I only got 300 likes, I'm going to delete that photo. So it was a dud. It's like, and so they'll clean out their things so that, because I remember because when I counsel them on certain things that they may have done that are questionable, then I'll sit down with them and go, give me your phone. I want to see what you're doing. Like, not as a parenty kind of thing, but just for me to learn, like, what are you guys doing? Who are you messaging? All that. They let me have this stuff. Like, they're really great. And I'm with them. Like, I'm not going to tell their parents. But the point is that they, it's all going on in the messenger. It's all very different. The other thing is, they'll say to me, they just want to have the 9 pictures and they want it to be clean. Like, they want those 9 to work together. And we've seen this with certain Instagram teachings of, those first 9 or the recent 9 rather are your catalog, your table of contents of who you are and everything. So it's kind of interesting that, some say these guys don't understand branding, but in some ways they do. They're not realizing that that's the effect maybe, but so they'll clean out all their imagery and then just start again. It's really interesting. Like, sometimes you'll see these guys and they have 60,000 followers and nothing. They've got no posts. And then all of a sudden it's like, there you see 9. It's just, so you have to understand that as I work with younger people, what I learn is I'm seeing these very drastically different uses of the medium from one year to the next. And, how they use Instagram, and it's all in the DMs. I don't know about you, but my entire business is done. If it's a coach, it's a Twitter DM. If it's a player, it's an Instagram DM. It has nothing to do with how many followers I do or don't have. And I don't have a huge, I've never bought any likes or anything. But my engagement, it comes to me in the DM and everything's booked in the DMs. So it's, you never know this is the other part of this is you don't really understand what's going on someone else's account unless you have access to their DMs.
That's so true.
Yeah. And actually that's where most of the risk is for a lot of people is in what they text. For the young guys, the Twitch, which is this app where they can watch each other play Fortnite.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun to go, because, there'll be people that will just get you for stuff you don't even realize. All of a sudden there's a shot of it and out we go. So it is the risk isn't even necessarily what you post, it's what you're doing.
Absolutely. And the risk is there, like, for all levels. And you're absolutely right. It's like every generation has a different format, a different approach to how they do things. And it's partly because of their priorities. Their priorities are drastically different. I'm much older. I'm a baby boomer. And then we get into, you know, Gen Y and
I am too, actually, Elaine.
no,
I think
you're not.
technically I'm
No,
also a
you're
baby.
not. You're one generation down.
I'm not actually.
Well, we'll give you that. We'll give you that. But you know, the millennials have their own way of doing things, and then
Yeah.
Gen Z are just, to me, they're fascinating. This is your 14-year-olds, and I just find them fascinating because
Yeah.
it is such a very different process. But they don't have the longevity, the experience, the understanding of
Yeah.
some of the things that can go wrong. So I think it's important that there are people like you who are handling it for the young ones that are going to be, you know, encircled by media and have everything they say and do, you know, under a microscope.
Well, I think, you know, also, and looking at the other end of things, the sort of nearing retirement is another interesting place to be because they didn't grow up with the same digital savvy. And so that there's a whole different host of things. But what I say to everybody is if you had to apologize today, like open up your accounts, you had to apologize for doing something dumb today in real life, how would that be perceived as being real, true, authentic, whatever you want to say, based on what you've already put out there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like based on what people think of you now. And if you've only put out, I'm an athlete and I have a charity, and we're talking like the pro guys.
Yeah.
That's what I call a plastic persona because no one knows who you are. Yeah. No one knows who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the difference. And you will see in the older community, those were the people who told you what they had for lunch. And, you know, I can think of one person in particular who that's all this man ever posts and ever has. But, you know, that's I guess what he thinks social media is. And God love him, you know, it keeps him entertained. And there's a lot who just do the little quizzes, and then you have, you know, older people like my dad who gets to stay in contact with people back home in Scotland and with people, our relations in America. And it really makes it a great place for him to be able to chat with people and reminisce. It's a very different format, I think, over 70, even than the baby boomers.
Right.
A very narrow view of what they're doing, if they're doing it. And there are an awful lot of them that have sort of found renewed vim and vigor by being able to connect with people from their past.
Yeah. And we started out this conversation saying we met at social media camp. Are you coming this year?
I am.
Yay. So I'm looking forward. I'm still working out what I'm specifically going to be speaking on, but I think it's going to be my new favorite talk. So.
Oh, good. Well, I'm excited about that, and I'm just going to remain mute on my piece and all this, but we shall see what happens. We shall see.
Yeah. Good. And it's great. We'll see Murray out there. I know you've known Murray for a very long time.
It's going to be really good seeing her. I just was reminded actually on Facebook yesterday of a picture of us from Las Vegas with a group of us at the big social summit in 2012.
Nice.
Oh yeah, it's going to be lovely. And lots of people to get to reconnect with there next year. So what I like to do with my clients, I'm looking at the time going, oh my God, I've kept you so long. Okay. I love to make sure that our guests get to leave with one little personal or business tip that our audience can implement in their own lives. You know, just something quick and immediate that is something that you do.
I always say show the real you so they'll accept all of you. And, you know, that's really the test of if people really understand who you truly are, They'll understand you're a human. They'll understand you make mistakes, and then when you need to, they'll rally for you, not against you. Hopefully,
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to wrap this up. I really thank you so much, Fiona, for a really interesting talk. But then I knew it was going to be great. I'm Elaine Lindsay, the Glamopreneur at True Social Media, and this is BBP TV show. So happy to chat with you. We'll see you again next time. And don't forget to check out Fiona's page on the website, where you'll get links to her site, her social, and we'll see what other little gems we have there about her. In the meantime, make your day amazing, and I'll see you next time.